Are you a micro guy, Kelly?
Bog Panda.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bog Panda. I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything. And joining me, of course, as always.
Hi, everybody. I'm Grand Duke Kelly Tool at KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram. If you get a moment, head on over to that Bog Panda YouTube channel and take a gander. And if you look at it, if your gander was pleasing to you, maybe you could subscribe. Hit that notification bell so when you know when new content comes out. Like a video or two, leave us a comment, and check out our merch. We'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, tonight, it's probably going to be a short one. We are going to talk about micro mages. Now, are you familiar at all with this game, Kelly, prior to me?
They're very, very small mages.
I believe that is an accurate description of this game.
Beyond that, I'm not.
So Micro Mages was a game that I was familiar with because it was a successful Kickstarter campaign, and I remember seeing people posting about it. I didn't play it until a while later, though, from it coming out. I do have notes this time. It came out in 2019, so it was probably 2020 or 2021 when I played it on Superconsole X, just to get our Superconsole X reference in there. But there was a Kickstarter campaign. It's an indie game that was made for the original NES, and it was released on physical cartridges, which is a thing that a lot of indie game developers are doing now, which I think is kind of cool if that's what you're into. It's released digitally as well, of course. What's interesting about it, though, and one of the things, when we've talked a lot about retro games, one of the things that I like about retro games is looking at the really creative ways they were able to accomplish things within the limited confines of the hardware they're dealing with. And this is something that Kelly and I have talked about quite a bit, talking about games like Ghostbusters on Commodore 64 and, using complex mathematical equations to carry over your inventory to other people's copies of the games and things like that. So really interesting stuff. And what's cool about Micro Mages and what finally got me to try it, because the name didn't necessarily hook me. I've never really been like a big fantasy or role playing kind of guy. And that's what that immediately evokes for me, that title. It's more of like a dungeon action kind of game. But what was interesting and what hooked me and made me want to try the game, and I, of course, going back to my trusty notes here, they wanted to make the game intentionally within the confines of the original launch cartridges for the NES. So that meant that they only had 40 kilobytes to work with because those are the original NES cartridges. So if you think back to the early NES games like original Mario Brothers and all those kind of things, and Metroid and things like that, where it's like usually black backgrounds and some sort of platforming with a simplistic character and things like that. Not the kind of detail that you started to get later with Super Mario Brothers 3 and onwards when they started using larger cartridges. So they could fit, larger cartridge size in terms of the ROMs that they could hold, not physically larger cartridges, but using the original 40 kilobyte game. So they intentionally, not only are they putting themselves under the constraints of making an original NES game, but making something that had to basically be practically a launch title for the NES. So they had to come up with kind of cool workarounds to fit this large scale game that they wanted to fit in there. So they came up with using these tiny characters and these kind of like scrolling backgrounds that they could recycle a lot of elements from. So you got these large feeling levels, but they were recycling a lot of these elements in order to save space on there. So it's a really, really fun game. You don't necessarily have to be into RPGs or anything like that. There's lots of action. It's fast paced. And to make it even better, it's now been released for the Evercade. And that's why we're bringing this up here. We've talked a lot about the Evercade recently. As many Evercade cartridges are, this is a developer specific cartridge. So you get Micro Mages. You get an expansion pack to that, a couple other games of theirs, as well as a demo of a future game that they have coming out. So it's a really cool kind of package. And again, a cartridge game with a demo on it for a future game is a really cool thing. That kind of stuff is why I really like Evercade. And I was especially excited, and I'll have to send a picture of this to Kelly, Especially excited that when I got my cartridge copy of this, because I was playing a ROM of it previously. So I'm just making sure I legally purchased a copy of this game and supported it. It came with some trading cards and the Micro Mages characters too, which is really cool. So have I sold you on trying this game, sir?
Oh, absolutely. So particularly it's on Superconsole X.
It is, yes.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you sold me on that, and you have basically also sold me that I'm going to get an Evercade of some sort. And I'm just at this point, curse you, Evercade, for continuing to produce product. But I'm a bit at a struggle because I think I've ruled out the verses because I just Daddy got no home for another console at this point in time. So I just am out of room there. So I think a handheld of some sort would be good. I like the original Evercade. That looked pretty cool to me. But the new one, also the third version with the horizontal gaming option, is tempting. Now that's going to play with a different cartridge set, right?
So what I believe is going to happen with it is that each one seems to be backwards compatible, but there are larger ROMs on some of them. So like the Versus, so on the Micro Mages card, which is a more recent release, it mentions that it's playable on both the Evercade and the Versus. And I think the specifically Versus cartridges are not backwards compatible to the Evercade because I think they're too large, the ROM size on them. So they need the more power of the Versus, and I assume that's going to happen again. Okay. So I think you are going to get cartridges that are maybe not backwards compatible from the new one back to the original Evercade, obviously with the tilting screen and stuff like that as well. Won't be programmed for that. But it seems like the original Evercade cartridges are going to work across everything.
Okay, cool. Yep, well, I'll be getting one. But yeah, no, I will definitely check that out. It does sound fun, and I am a little more familiar and open to the kind of D&D world, so Mages is cool. I'm good with that, and so that'll be fun there. But yeah, I'll definitely want to check that out. It is interesting. I mean, I get it. Part of it is just really pressing your skill set, but to put yourself in a box that you don't necessarily have to be in, to say, well, we're only going to do it per the original spec. I mean, kudos to them in terms of the confidence in what they could do. But at some point, work smarter, not harder. It's like, yeah, but think about what the game would have been if you without do not confine yourself to that smaller one to begin with. But I still think it's impressive that they can do it. And I think that's part of what a lot of these folks do is that they have such pride in what they can do in their creativeness. And it is nice to push yourself on that. So pretty cool. But yeah, I will be checking it out.
Another indie game, just as a tease for a potential future episode. First off, I intend on doing a couple of, for anybody who's been checking out all the shorts we've been putting out lately, hopefully I'll have some Micro Mages shorts, some stuff with the trading cards and stuff as well. But also in the future, I'd really like to do another indie game called Soulless. And that's another one I really want to talk about as far as what they were able to do within the confines of the system there. Although I really think the indie retro game that most people know is Kelly Will Punch You in the Face Like Chuck Garrett.
Yeah. And as a reminder to everybody watching, Mike's shorts, so you're all watching mine. We get that. Totally get that. His are there too. So do him a solid, give him a pity watch, do something like
truth.
that.
Kelly is the Stanley Kubrick of making shorts.
It's a strange world. We have to do a show on that at some point, talk about that, and hopefully pull some other folks in here and talk about it, because it's a crazy world. It's interesting. Yeah. But cool. Well, I think that probably wraps it up for this show, and I'd like to say thanks for watching, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.